Hello and welcome to the Bhagavatam. Today we're going to be talking about the fall from grace. Now there's a very different version in Christianity and there's a very different version in the Vedas. In the Vedas, it is really seen not as some eternal battle that is taking place between good and evil, but rather as part of Leela, the pastimes of God, and our own pastimes as well, because we're here not just to live happily ever after, though we would like to, but that dream of happily ever after comes from a deep longing that lies within us, a longing for happiness that never fades, a happiness that is eternal. There is a longing and a dream within us for something, a love that will last forever. There is a longing for life that will last forever. We'll never get old, we'll never die, we'll never get sick. This longing comes from a deep place within us. It's universal. It's there in everyone. Every single human being has this in them. It is ubiquitous. And the reason is because this is our ultimate and true reality. This is where we've come from, this is where we belong, and this is what our soul is longing for. So what is that place? What is that heaven? Is it some God sitting in the cloud with, on a throne and you've got angels playing harps? Well, that's one version of it. But the Vedas, the Bhagavatam especially, gives you a grand picture, an amazing picture. You're going to be in for a treat today as you learn about what the spiritual world looks like, what the light looks like, and within the light, the planets that are there, and the different incarnations of the divine that exist, and how they're all there as part of an amazing plan. Now, as we go beyond that, we begin to understand also some other intricate stories. So I'm not going to spoil it for you right now. We're going to dive right into it, and we'll get to understand the stories of Jai, Vijay, and some of the really demonic and horrific beings that incarnated on this earth, and why they did. Why is it that someone as divine as that can become as harmful and demonic as some of the people we see on this planet right now who cause so much of havoc and chaos in the world? So let's get started. All right, today we're on Canto 3, Chapter 15. And I'm deeply grateful to all of you that are here, that are watching it either now live or who will watch later on YouTube and wherever else you find this. Thank you so much for being here. This is the beginning of a new year, and I wish this will be a wonderful year for all of you. All right, so we begin the Chapter 15 of the third canto, and it starts like this. It begins with a story that's been going on since the last few episodes, and in this point that we've reached, we've come across the great sage Kashyap Muni and his wife Diti, and they had sex during what was considered a very inauspicious time, at the time of sunset. And now she's harboring an embryo so powerful within her. See, he was a great sage, and she was of the lineage of Daksh, one of the original progenitors, one of the original beings on the planet. And unlike the modern day ideas of history and of archaeology and evolution, the Vedas tell us that people were far more advanced on this planet than anything we've conceived of so far. So these were very powerful beings, and when they mate, they come up with very powerful entities. Now, unfortunately, the time was inauspicious, and by the way, our consciousness is very important when we're having a baby. If you want to have a child, you want to have a baby, it is very important to look at your consciousness. You see, your consciousness attracts your experience. Your consciousness determines what's going on in your life right now. Your consciousness determines how you experience the world and how the world impacts you. What you see is filtered through your consciousness. You don't see the world as it is. We see the world as we are. I love that saying. And it's really true, because it is our consciousness, our state, you can call it your state of mind, that filters reality. Reality is not objective. Reality is extremely subjective. So, the consciousness of Diti, when she and Kashyap, when they were having that child, determined the kind of child that would come to them. That is a very powerful science right there. And so people over the ages have learned this, and to attract a child who is going to be, let's say, a lover of God, a person who's highly spiritual, someone who is highly evolved, one needs to be in that state of consciousness and of mind, very pure in your thinking, very quiet in your mind, and able to draw to yourself that kind of being. Because you're going to spend, 10, 20, 30 years raising that child, and then that child is still going to be part of your life for the next 50 years after that. It's a long journey you spend with the child that you bring into this world. And so you might as well call for a child, or try attract a child who is going to be someone who will bring joy into your life, someone who will uplift you, themselves, and the people around, someone who will make a contribution to the quality of life on this planet. I don't want to say save the world, that no one's going to do that, but yeah, make a difference. Be of some, valuable contribution to what's going on out here. We need all the help we can get. So, yeah. So with that in mind, let's proceed. So, unfortunately, what was happening was the embryo in Diti's womb was so powerful that there was complete darkness throughout the universe. And the demigods were perturbed. They approached the creator Brahma with prayers for help. Brahma told them of a time. Now Brahma starts to narrate his story. Everything in the Vedas, in the Bhagavatam, is linked up with stories. And you may say, well, I don't need these stories. I just want you to get to the facts. But you know what? We are people of stories. And when we hear the story, everything starts to click in a very different way. So the Vedas are very much based upon presenting wisdom through storytelling. So right now Brahma is telling them of a story, of an actual incident, an actual time, when his 4 sons, the 4 Kumaras, Sanak, Sanatan, Sananda, and Sanat, due to being liberated souls, see, they chose to not get married, to not have children, although their father really wanted them to. They wanted to attain the highest level of spiritual attainment, known as moksha, or liberation. And so they attained that after tremendous meditation and spiritual practices, and now as liberated souls, they had chosen to live and remain in child bodies. They could choose. They didn't have to age and get old. And alongside with that, they chose to travel everywhere in the material and spiritual universes. This too was possible by their yogic attainment. Just in case you've missed some of the earlier episodes, I'll fill you up. I'll update you on some of the things that we saw earlier. So this is Brahma, at least an artist's rendition of Brahma. And this is his sons, the 4 sons. He's got many other kids, but this is the 4 sons that were born directly from the mind of Brahma, the Kumaras, the 4 Kumaras, right? Kumara. That's the way you spell that. So the 4 Kumaras, and having seen that, now let's continue with the rest of the story. So the Kumaras, one time, they went to the Vaikuntha planets in the spiritual sky. Now again, I will fill you in on what that is. Give me a moment, but let's read a little more. So this Vaikuntha planets are the equivalent of what in most religions they would call the kingdom of God. And they are situated in the spiritual sky, which most spiritual people will tell you, or which will call the light. So within the light, also known as the Brahma Jyoti, Brahma meaning the divine, Jyoti meaning light, the divine light, within the Brahma Jyoti are the Vaikuntha planets. Now, these planets are the abode of Narayan. Narayan is the form of Vishnu, as well as known as Hari. I'll go over these names with you and I'll show them to you in writing so you can understand. And these planets are filled with spiritual variegatedness. Now, while everyone wants to go and merge into the light, become one with the divine, these planets within that light have spiritual variety. We're going to hear a lot more about that. The material world, with its abundance of variety, and it really does have an immense amount of variety here from all the species and all the options and the planets and the places that we find here. The material world with its abundance of variety is a distorted reflection of the spiritual world. So not only is man made in the image of God, but so also is the world made in the image of the spiritual world. And that's something that you may not have heard before. So let's put another picture on the screen here for you to look at, and maybe it'll help you understand. So the Brahma Jyoti is the light, okay, spreading through the entire spiritual universe. The earth and all the planets in the material world, I didn't mark it, but if you look at the bottom right in that picture, the bottom right, there's a small little black bubble. So the entire universe with all its billions of galaxies is a tiny part of the entire creation, that little black bubble at the bottom right. That's where you see Vishnu, that's where you see Brahma, and that's where you see all that. So now, the rest of the spiritual sky is light, and within that light are the Vaikuntha planets. The highest of the Vaikuntha planets is known as Goloka. Goloka is the planet where you see there's like a lotus and there's Radha and Krishna with their friends and the cows, and that is the highest level of attainment. So, with that idea of the spiritual sky, let's proceed and see what happened next. So we heard about the Sanat Kumars going, or the Kumars, the four sons of Brahma, going to the spiritual world. Now, what are the kind of people that can go to the spiritual world? That's a super important question to understand. Like, why can't I go there? Why can't you go there? Why are we here, right? If God is there and there are people there with God, then firstly, what's it like out there? Like, if I'm going to go somewhere, I want to know what it's like. If I want to visit Italy and I want to go to Rome or Naples or France or whatever else, I want to know what it's like there. Right? What should I expect? What's the tourist stuff to do? And if I did want to live there, what does it take to get a visa, or how do I get a green card, or whatever it takes, right, to live there? And what kind of person will be allowed? Right? Is everyone allowed to go there? Well, the Chaitanya Charitamrita says that persons who have developed desirable qualities can enter into the kingdom of God. Some people think that you can enter the kingdom of God just because you've been saved. And that may be. You've been given grace. Yes, that may be. But I think, again, this is going to be my view here, that attaining of grace or receiving grace, receiving blessings, receiving someone's, salvation, still means we need to develop ourselves, because if we don't develop ourselves and if we land up in that kingdom of God just as we are right now, with all our egoic flaws and with all our messy stuff, our envy, our greed, all of that, we're going to turn heaven into hell, right? So the Chaitanya Charitamrita, a very amazing book about Chaitanya, and it's an advanced study really, but I'll tell you about it some other time, mentions 26 qualities that a person needs to develop in order to attain the kingdom of God. And these are being deeply compassionate and kind, a person who does not quarrel with anyone, who accepts God as the highest goal of life, who is equal to everyone, does not see high and low, does not see someone as rich as being better than someone who is poor, someone who is faultless in character, magnanimous, mild, always clean internally and externally, does not profess to possess anything, does not feel anything is mine or anyone is mine, does not try to cling or hold on to the stuff of this world, who is the benefactor of all living entities, who is peaceful and completely surrendered to God, who has no material desire to fulfill, is meek and humble, always steady, and has conquered the sensual activities, does not eat more than required, has no material identity. This last one is going to be very important. It is respectful to all and does not demand respect for oneself. Who is very grave, compassionate, friendly, poetic, expert in all activities, and is silent in nonsense when people are talking nonsense. So you might say, well, that's a long list, and how do I possibly develop such qualities? I'll give you a secret. The qualities that we would like to aspire to, the divine qualities, the qualities of godliness, are all hidden within us. You do not need to individually try to cultivate them. They are the qualities of your soul. And that once attaining that place of the soul, these qualities will naturally and easily manifest. So you might say, well then, okay, how do I get to the soul? There's a simple method. Quiet the mind. How do I do that? That's where meditation comes in. And yes, the blessings of a highly evolved being or of God definitely help in that process, because quieting the mind is the biggest challenge we face. Having done that, we will be able to awaken the soul, and then by looking at these qualities, we can consciously, easily, and effortlessly cultivate these qualities. Cultivating the qualities is not about really doing something, or rather becoming something. Those qualities are already here. It's about learning how to manifest them in the world. You are already that. The Vedanta says, Tattvam Asi, you are that. So as you realize your godly nature, your spiritual nature, you then learn to manifest it in the world. Right? You learn to live from that place. That's the idea. So coming now, what is in the spiritual world? And here's what the Vedas tell us and show us. This is a picture of Lakshmi and Narayan. So Narayan is also known by many other names, Vishnu, Hari, and his partner, his beloved, his wife, is Lakshmi, also known as the goddess of fortune. Many pray to her for wealth, but she is his, and you cannot separate them. So this is showing an image of an artist's conception of what it's like, Lakshmi Narayan. Again, different pictures, there are different artists trying to depict these beautiful entities. And as I said earlier, the name Narayan is also interchangeable with Vishnu or Hari. All right. In the Vaikuntha planets lives the Supreme Godhead, Bhagavan. Bhagavan means the Supreme Being, also known as Narayan, Vishnu, Hari, who is filled with the mode of pure goodness known as Shuddha Sattva, pure goodness. There is no trait of evil. There is no tinge of evil, no tinge of envy, no tinge of greed, no tinge of any of these material qualities that we struggle with here. He is always engaged. So what is God doing? He's always engaged in increasing the happiness of his loved ones. That's right. Your happiness is his happiness, and his happiness is your happiness. That's the simple relationship. Joy joy pyaro bhave soy bhave moy. What my beloved likes is what I like. And joy joy moy bhave soy bhave pyaro. And what I like is what my beloved likes. What I like is what my beloved likes, and what my beloved likes is what I like. You see, it becomes a loop. What do you want? What do you like? No, I want what you like. I want what you... So we're kind of, really wanting to please and see the other person happy. What are some of the qualities of the people who live in the spiritual world? Well, it says here that all the residents have spiritual forms. That means they are non-material forms. In other words, they're not physical bodies that age and get sick and die, but they are eternal forms, spiritual forms, similar to that of Narayan. In fact, they have 4 hands, lotus-like eyes, and bluish skin. They are free from the influence of time and suffering, including being free from birth. Means they are never reborn. There is no cycle of birth and death. They do not die, they do not get old, and they do not get diseased. Now, it's some interesting stuff. They fly in airplanes. made of lapis lazuli, emerald, and gold, accompanied by their sweethearts, singing the glories of God. They are engaged in loving service to God, which satiates them with transcendental pleasure, such that there is no envy and no desire for selfish gain or gratification of the senses. There is no struggle for survival. There is no attempt at trying to accumulate or hoard anything. It goes on to say that ladies with their smiling faces and raised noses are even more beautiful, or rather have become even more beautiful because of kisses by Hari. So the Supreme Godhead, the Supreme Being, has a loving relationship with all of them. And because of his kisses, they have become even more beautiful. All of the women there are as beautiful as Lakshmi, the goddess of fortune. In their hands are lotuses and ornaments made of gold and bedecked with jewels. Their homes are made of marble, and the walls and floors have golden borders. The reservoirs of water in their gardens have coral-paved banks. All this opulence is attained not by hard work, as it is in this world, but by the benediction, the blessings, the grace of the Supreme Being, Narayan. Then they talk about something else very interesting, and that is called the Kalpavriksha. It is the wish-fulfilling tree. The ground that is there is made of touchstone. That means everything that touches, whatever you touch with that stone or that rock or that turns into gold or turns into whatever you wish. There are many forests with kalpavriksha or wish-fulfilling trees filled with flowers and fruits. And anyone who sits or asks anything from those trees will have their desires met immediately. There are flowering plants with fragrant flowers such as Madhavi, Champaka, Parijata, and Tulsi laden with honey. Bees hum in a high pitch singing the glories of Hari, while the birds like cuckoo, crane, swan, parrot, etc. stop their singing to listen. So you see, everything that we have here is also there, except that now there it is connected with God, that even the bees are singing the glories of God. They are chanting his names, they are singing his glories. The trees, the land, the animals, everything is spiritual and yet has a particular form. Everything is animate, everything, including the rocks, including the trees. Everything is animate and there is nothing inanimate. Everything is non-differentiated. There is no difference between the animals, the plants, the people, or anything else that exists there. Everything is conscious. Everything is vibrating consciousness. Vibrating consciousness. This is just, something you may never have heard of. I never heard of. But I can tell you this, it is so amazing to learn that which is the spiritual world and this which is the material world, there are similarities. Here too, everything has consciousness, but it is covered. Everything here is energy, but it is covered with this body, with matter. And so when you go up to a rock, that rock cannot move. That rock cannot walk around. It cannot turn into a tree, for example. But in the spiritual world, it can. But that rock is made of the same energy as what is in the spiritual world. It's made of the same stuff, except that in the material world, it is locked into a certain form and shape and within a certain set of laws where there's gravity, where there's all kinds of things. But in the spiritual world, you have none of that. Energy, consciousness can take whatever form it chooses. So Brahma now, who is narrating this whole thing about his 4 sons going to Vaikuntha, continues his narrative after describing some of the spiritual world. He says, "It is very much regrettable that unfortunate people Do not discuss the descriptions of the Vaikuntha planets, but engage in topics which are unworthy to hear and which bewilder one's intelligence and cast them into the darkest region of ignorance. So I like to take a moment to reflect on that. What are some of the things we engage in talking about? Do we talk ill of others? Do we criticize them? Do we criticize ourselves? Do we engage our time in useless pursuits from video games and movies and so on, where we get engrossed in different stories which really may or may not have much value, and we lose out on the time, on spending the time in being able to hear about the glories of the divine, of God, and of the spiritual world? I'm not saying I'm perfect. I also do many of those things, and I encourage you, along with myself, to be able to spend more and more of our time, more and more of our attention, more and more of our devotion in the matters of spirituality, in matters of hearing about and chanting about God. Why? Because this is not our permanent home. We've come here for a little while, a few years, maybe a few lifetimes. But all of that is a drop in the bucket in terms of eternal time. All of that will be over in just a moment. All the suffering you've had, all the trials you've been through, all the experiences you've had, the traumas you've had, which you'd like to hold on to and make a big deal out of, will be over like this. Holding on to them is what's coming in the way. We hold on to our traumas, we hold on to our suffering, we hold on to the terrible things that happened to us in this life. And whatever we hold on to is that which will limit us from becoming free from this world. It is important to let it all go. None of it is serving us. It is serving the ego, because the ego wants to tell everybody, you know what happened to me? Oh yeah, let me tell you my story. This happened and that happened and the other happened. Yeah, right. And then the other person says, well, you know what happened to me too? And maybe they've got an even worse story to say. And then we have this competition for whose pain is the greater pain. But none of it matters. I know as a human being it matters. I know that when it matters, it matters. And it needs to be empathized with, and it needs to be heard, and it needs to be validated, and then it needs to be released and let go of. Do not hold it forever, because the suffering you hold on to, the trauma you hold on to, will only generate more of the same. It will keep you stuck in this world. It will keep you stuck in its vibration. It will keep you stuck at that level of consciousness which created it in the first place. And it was never about anyone else. It was always about your level of consciousness. I'm not saying you're responsible or it's your fault, but it's your level of consciousness that is attracting certain experiences to you. Just like trash, attracts bugs, right? If you have trash sitting around for too long, bugs start to form inside it and gather around it. It's just what happens, right? It doesn't mean trash won't be there, and it doesn't mean that we shouldn't keep any around. It will be there for a day, a half day, or whatever, but we need to get rid of it as soon as possible. We need to gather it and then move it on. Same with our tragedies, our sufferings, our traumas, whatever you want to call it. It's important to be able to let them go. Okay. So Brahma continues. He says, the human form of life is of such importance that we also desire that he, the highest being in this universe, Brahma, also desires to have such a life. What life? Human life. Why? For in the human form, one can attain perfect dharma and knowledge. Why does he say that? Because here there is an equal amount of suffering and of pleasure. We have both. You have a choice. In the heavenly planets, in the higher planetary systems, there is much greater pleasure. And when there is more pleasure, like when somebody's very rich, it's very hard to extricate oneself from that. It's very addictive. When you have a beautiful body, when you have great riches, it's very addictive. That's why the world is designed in such a way that we lose that youth, we lose that beauty. The world is designed in such a way that we have to leave our belongings behind and leave this body even, and all the loved ones, so that our attachments are ultimately broken again and again and again, life after life after life, until we realize that none of this is really working, and that there must be more to life than all the stuff that everybody else take to be so important. So he says, here is the place, this earthly plane, this human form, where we can truly begin to understand dharma, that is, how does one live, how does one really attain one's spiritual goal, and get true knowledge of that. He says, if one in this human form of life does not understand the Supreme Being and His abode, it is to be understood that he is very much affected by Maya, or the illusory energy. There is the divine energy and there is the illusory energy. The divine energy is the energy of our soul, the energy of God. The illusory energy, or Maya, is the energy of this world, all the allurements, all the things that attract us, all the stuff we want for Christmas, all the things we want in our desires and our needs and everything else that pulls us towards it. And we need to be able to say, no, I have a different goal. I have something else that I'm looking for in life. I don't want to be distracted by all this stuff. Then Brahma continues, he says, persons whose bodily features change in ecstasy and who breathe heavily and perspire due to hearing the glories of God are promoted to the kingdom of God, even though they do not care for meditation and other austerities. So in other words, there's some ecstatic rapture that occurs when one begins to love God, and he's describing some of those symptoms. And when one has those symptoms, when one has attained that love of God and that ecstatic rapture, that state of being and consciousness where you feel yourself and you're hearing about these things, you're hearing about Krishna or about Vaikuntha, or you're hearing about these places, and it brings tears into your eyes and you realize, oh my God, why am I here? Take me back. Take me home. When that rapture occurs, when that ecstasy happens, that is the calling of the soul. And when that happens is when we become ready to go back. Even though we may not care for be able to do a lot of meditation or perform many austerities, love of God is the most powerful process for getting out of this entanglement of this world. Why? Because you've got something that is more powerful than the world itself. All right, let's continue with the story. When the 4 Kumaras reached Vaikuntha, they reached the Vaikuntha planets in the spiritual sky by dint of their mystic yoga, they experienced extreme happiness. They found that the spiritual sky was illuminated by highly decorated airplanes piloted by the best devotees of Vaikuntha. These 4 sons of Brahma, the 4 Kumaras, had no thought in terms of ours and theirs. There was no separation between what other people had and what they had. They just came with an open mind, and they entered through the 6 doors of Vaikuntha, which were made of gold and diamonds. At the 7th gate, they saw 2 shining beings. Now, why were they able to enter like that? Because of their consciousness. But then at the 7th gate, there were 2 shining beings, armed with maces and adorned with most valuable jewelry, earrings, diamonds, helmets, garments, etc. The 2 doormen were garlanded with fresh flowers, which attracted intoxicated bees and were placed around their necks and between their 4 blue arms. From their arched eyebrows, discontented nostrils, and reddish eyes, they appeared somewhat agitated. The 4 boy sages, who had nothing to cover their bodies, they were actually going around naked, nothing to cover their bodies but the atmosphere, appeared, the 4 boys, they were sages actually, and they appeared to be only 5 years old, even though they were the oldest of all living creatures and had realized the truth about the self. When the doormen saw them, they blocked their way with their staff, like, stop. And when the Kumaras, these 4 boy sages, were forbidden entrance, their eyes suddenly turned red because of anger due to their great eagerness to see their most beloved master, Sri Hari. Hari, Narayan, Vishnu, same. So this is the scene that takes place. Jai and Vijay are stopping the Kumaras from entering. That's one rendition, and here's another. Right? So the sages said, who are these two persons who have developed such a discordant mentality, even though they are posted in the highest position and are expected to have developed the same qualities as God? How did these two persons living in Vaikuntha become this way? Where is the possibility of an enemy coming into the kingdom of God? The Supreme Godhead has no enemy. Who could be envious of him? Probably these two persons are impostors, therefore they suspect others to be like themselves. This is a really important statement. They must be impostors, therefore they suspect others to be like themselves. There's a saying that a thief always thinks everyone else is a thief. And a person sees the world not as they are, not as it is, but as they are. So we see in others that which is in us. If you were a pure, saintly being, you would see only beauty in others. You would see only goodness in others. But if you have impurities within you, then you will see others as untrustworthy, you will see others as mean, you will see them as envious, whatever it is. The impurities that are in you will cause you to see the world through that filter. Very, very important to notice, and it's the same thing being pointed out here. So when you see the world a certain way, always check back. What part of me is making me see things like that? Now, I'm not saying everything is good in this world either, but it's very important to check in and see what part of that is you and what part of that is out there. That way you can separate the two things, and that way you can learn more and more about yourself and become more self-aware. In Vaikuntha, the four Kumars continue, in Vaikuntha there is complete harmony between the residents and God. Why then is there a seed of fear in this field of harmony? These two persons are dressed like inhabitants of Vaikuntha, but from where has their disharmony come into existence? Therefore, let us consider how they should be punished. The punishment should be apt to bestow benefit upon them. They're going to curse them, but they want to make sure that they do it in a way that is going to bestow benefit upon them. Since they find duality in the existence of Vaikuntha life, they are contaminated and should be removed from this place to the material world. Why? Because the material world is the place of duality, and one who thinks in terms of duality belongs here. And the moment you stop thinking in terms of duality and you start seeing non-duality, you realize that you no longer belong here. You no longer need to be here anymore. Your consciousness has changed. So when the doormen realized that they were going to be cursed, they became very afraid. And they fell at the feet of the Kumaras in great anxiety, because their curse the curse by these Brahmins, these great devotees, these sages, could not be counteracted by any weapon. They repented and prayed for compassion. And this shows the next scene. That is where Vishnu appears at that moment, or rather Narayan appears in that moment. At that moment, Narayan appeared along with his spouse Lakshmi and their associates. The Kumars saw Narayan, who they had formerly... So these are the four boys again, the boy sages. They saw Narayan, who they had formerly seen only within their hearts, while in ecstatic trance. So in their meditations, they had seen the form of Narayan, right? And now they were seeing him in person for the first time. God is the reservoir of all pleasure. See, this is a very important statement. We look for pleasure in this world, but the pleasure we get in this world is only momentary. It's only for a few seconds, for a little while, and then it's gone. We're all out looking for the next pleasure, the next pleasure. We are pleasure-seeking beings. That is natural to us. It is innate in us. But why do we seek pleasure? Because in that pleasure we are actually seeking God. God, as it says here, is the reservoir of all pleasure, the fountainhead, the source of all pleasure. And it is in God that we find the ultimate pleasure. That is why one can renounce the world who has found God, because they have found the ultimate pleasure. And nothing of this world now appeals to them anymore. So it continues. His Narayan's auspicious presence is meant for everyone's benediction, and his affectionate smiling and glancing touch the core of the heart. Narayan's beautiful bodily color is blackish, so bluish black, and his broad chest is the resting place of Lakshmi, the goddess of fortune. He was adorned with a girdle that shone brightly on the yellow cloth covering his large hips, and he wore a garland of fresh flowers which was distinguished by humming bees. His lovely wrists were graced with bracelets, and he rested one of his hands on the shoulder of Garuda, his carrier, and twirled a lotus flower with another hand. His cheeks enhanced the beauty of his alligator-shaped pendants, which outshone lightning. His nose was prominent, and his head was covered with gem-studded crown. A charming necklace hung between his stout arms, and his neck was adorned with the Kaustubha gem. Lakshmi, the goddess of fortune, is considered the most beautiful creation within the material and spiritual worlds. That's his wife, Lakshmi, also known as the goddess of fortune. But Narayan's exquisite beauty was so attractive that it defeated even the beauty of Lakshmi. There is a part here where Prabhupada talks about how in the worship of Narayan, he is considered even more beautiful than the most beautiful Lakshmi. But in the Leela of Krishna, Radha is considered far more beautiful than even Krishna. But that's a question of bhav, it's a question of the emotion and the feeling that one has. So beauty is, of course, as they say, in the eye of the beholder. And somehow it's different in different places here. Anyway, Narayan, who thus manifested himself, is worshipable by me. Brahma is saying this. Brahma, the creator of this entire universe, is saying Narayan is worshipable by me, by Lord Shiva, and by all of you. The sages regarded him with insatiable eyes, and joyously bowed their heads at his lotus feet. When the breeze carrying the aroma of tulsi leaves from the toes of his lotus feet, when they smelt that breeze, when they smelt that aroma, the Kumaras who are attached to the impersonal understanding, they're attached to the impersonal, means they want to merge into the light, but now they've come face to face with Narayan in the Vaikuntha, and they have smelt the fragrance of the tulsi leaves from his lotus feet, and they experienced a change in body and mind. The beauty of his face appeared to them like the inside of a blue lotus. Blue lotus is considered the most rare of all lotuses and the most beautiful of all. Not easily found anywhere. And his smile appeared to be like a blossoming jasmine flower. The sages felt fully satisfied and then looked upon the nails of his lotus feet, which resembled rubies. Thus they were extremely delighted to behold him. They viewed and meditated on his transcendental body repeatedly, like they couldn't get his eyes off him. Right? Like that love song, "Can't Get My Eyes Off of You." It's kind of like that. This form of God is meditated on by yogis in meditation. It is not imaginary, but factual, as proven by great yogis through the ages. The Kumaras said, "Even though you are seated in everyone's heart, you are not manifest to everyone. We see you face to face, although you are unlimited." So the unlimited is manifest here as a being and can be seen face to face. That which is everywhere can now be somewhere. You say, well, how's that possible? Well, why not? God can do anything. The Kumaras continued, "The statements we have heard about you from our father Brahma have now been actually realized by your kind appearance. We know that you are the supreme absolute truth, the supreme Godhead. Your transcendental eternal form can be understood only by your mercy, through unflinching devotion by those whose hearts have been purified. Persons who are very expert and most intelligent engage in hearing narrations about your auspicious activities and pastimes, which are worth chanting and hearing. Such persons do not care even for the highest material benediction, namely liberation, to say nothing of other less important benedictions like material happiness or elevation to heavenly planets. We pray that you let us be born in any hellish condition of life, just as long as our hearts and minds are always engaged in the service of your lotus feet. Our words are made beautiful by speaking of your activities, and as long as our ears are always filled with the chanting of your transcendental qualities. With that, we come to the next chapter, which is number 16, and we see what happened next. Narayan thanked the Kumars for their nice words and then said, "My attendants Jai and Vijay have committed a great offense against you. Their offense is an offense by myself." Now he takes it completely on himself. Their offense is an offense by myself. I approve of the punishment you have meted out to them and seek your forgiveness. A wrong act committed by a servant leads people in general to blame his master, just as a spot of white leprosy on any part of the body pollutes all of the skin. Even the most sinful person is immediately purified if he takes bath in hearing the glorification of my name, fame, etc. Now you have realized me. By seeing him, now he says, now you have realized me without doubt. Therefore I will not hesitate to lop off my own arm if its conduct is found hostile to you. Because I am the servitor, the servant of my devotees, my lotus feet have become so sacred that they immediately wipe out all sin, and I have acquired such a disposition that the goddess of fortune, Lakshmi, does not leave me, even though I have no attachment for anyone. While others praise her beauty and observe sacred vows to secure her, even her favor, for even a little bit. So what he's saying is Lakshmi, everyone wants Lakshmi, everybody wants fortune, everybody wants wealth. And they pray to Lakshmi for that. But he says Lakshmi is completely attached to him. And even though he is not attached to anyone, he loves everyone equally. Lakshmi will not leave his side because that's her deepest love for him. Then he goes on. The water, this is Narayan speaking, the water of the Ganges, the Ganga, is remnant left from my feet when they are washed. So when his feet are being washed in the Karnodakshai Vishnu form, that water sanctifies the three worlds along with Shiva who carries it on his head. If I can take the dust of the feet of the devotee on my head, who will refuse to do the same? So here we have God saying, I want to take the dust of the feet of your feet on my head. God bowing down to the devotee, saying that your love has conquered me. Your devotion has made me your servant. I will do anything for you. Right? And in the same spirit, we need to realize that whoever loves God, whoever serves God with a pure heart, we need to give them that same quality of love and devotion as we do to God. Because you can't love, like how the saying goes, love me, love my dog. Well, it's the same here. We who serve him are like his dog. So when you love him, you love his dog. And that's the spirit with which we render devotion and service and love to all the devotees of God. Be very careful never to criticize them, because that will only work against you. Narayan continued, Brahmins such as yourself, the cows and the defenseless creatures are my own body. See, he holds every defenseless creature and the Brahmins who worship him as sacred. The cows, all creatures. And here we are mercilessly killing them and eating them. It's awful. He continues saying, these servants of mine, these two guards, right, who are guarding the doors of Vaikuntha, have transgressed against you not knowing the mind of their master. I shall therefore deem it a favor to me if you allow them to return soon after reaping the fruit of their transgression. So what were they were supposed to go to the material world, down from the spiritual world, which normally doesn't happen. It never happens. It's never supposed. Krishna says very clearly in the Bhagavad Gita, one who comes to my abode never returns to this material world. Never. Right? So this was a very unusual incident. There's a secret behind it, which I'll tell you about in a moment. The sages had been bitten by the serpent of anger, and now they said, O Supreme Godhead, we are unable to know what you intend for us to do. For even though you are the supreme ruler of all, you speak in our favor as if we had done something good for you. They realized they really messed up. They got angry, and they cursed these two guys. These two guys were just doing their job, and they didn't realize that these 4 kids standing in front of them were actually great sages. They thought just a couple of kids, coming around like brats, wanting to get in and see their master. And Narayan was there resting, and he didn't want him to be disturbed. But they'd made a big error. So the Kumars continue, the 4 sages, they say, your considering the Brahmins to be in the highest position is your example for teaching others. Actually, you are the supreme worshipable deity, not only for the gods, but also for the Brahmins. You are the protector of dharma and the personification of religion. You are unlimited, inexhaustible, and unchangeably eternal. Or rather, you are the reservoir of goodness and the proprietor and maintainer of all the universes, material and spiritual. Whatever punishment you wish to award these 2 innocent persons, or also to us, we shall accept without duplicity. We understand that we have cursed 2 faultless persons. Narayan replied, know that the punishment you inflicted on them was originally ordained by me, and therefore they will fall to birth in a demonic family. They will be firmly united with me in thought through mental concentration intensified by anger, and they will return to my presence shortly. You see, what has also been there is that these two doorkeepers, Jai and Vijay, they were given the choice that they could have 7 births as an ordinary human, mortal, or 3 births as a demonic being. And if they chose the latter, Narayan said, I will personally be incarnating and will fight with you. I'm looking for someone to fight with. Now, they were eager to get back to Vaikuntha, and they were eager to be of service to their master, to God. So they said, we'll go with the 3 demonic births, whatever it takes to get back as quickly as possible. So the sages then offered their respects and returned, and Narayan said to Jai and Vijay, depart this place, but fear not. Though I am capable of nullifying the Brahmin's curse, I will not do so. On the contrary, it has my approval. This departure from Vaikuntha was foretold by Lakshmi, the goddess of fortune. She was very angry because when she left my abode and then returned, you stopped her at the gate while I was sleeping. So this is the hidden story behind it. By practicing the mystic yoga system in anger, you will be cleansed of the sin of disobeying the Brahmins and within a very short time return to me. Now, why the mystic yoga system in anger? Because anger is a very powerful meditation. And whether you love God deeply or you hate God deeply, either way you come to God. It's a trick. Either of them is a meditation. Both are and whatever you meditate upon, that will come to happen. So if you meditate on God, do it deeply. If you hate God, passionately hate God. Don't be in between. It's the in-between people who get stuck. Well, a little bit here, a little bit there. No, then you're going to waste many, many lifetimes on this earth. Be passionate. Be passionate in your love. And if you're an atheist and you don't believe in God, then be passionate in your hate. Because that meditation will then bring you closer and closer to God. Because meditation, whatever you focus on, that will grow. After speaking this, Narayan returned to his abode, and the 2 doorkeepers, their beauty and luster diminished by the curse of the Brahmins, became morose and fell from Vaikuntha to the material world. They entered the womb of Diti through the powerful semen of Kashyap Muni. It is their demonic prowess that had spread darkness throughout the universe by the will of God, and it is the Supreme Being Himself who will come to our rescue. So much of what will follow will actually be about what happened next. So more to follow here. For now, I think we'll pause. We'll stop here. This is the end of that chapter, and we'll take some questions. I'd love to know what your thoughts are. Please do write down your comments or questions, or if you'd like to come on Zoom or talk here, I'd love to have you ask your questions live. Let me switch over. All right, and yes. Any questions so far? I'm sure you thought of something. I'm sure there was a lot on your mind as we were talking. Does anyone have a question? You can unmute yourself if you're on Zoom. And I'd love to hear from you. Even the most inconsequential question is meaningful. Even the smallest thing matters. I'd love to hear what you've got, what you've been thinking. Okay. All right, looks like we don't have any questions. I will see you guys next week. Thank you so much for being here. A Happy New Year again, and wish you all a wonderful year ahead. And thank you so much for supporting me here. Please be sure to let people know about these talks. Let them know that I have the playlist for the Bhagavad Gita and the Bhagavatam all on the YouTube channel. They can go to Spiritual Wisdom channel or look for my name, Rohit Juneja, and they will find me there. So thank you so much for supporting me. Jai Shri Krishna. Hare Krishna. Happy New Year to everyone.